Well, hello everybody. My name's Louise Savage of Louise Savage Muses. A very warm welcome if you're viewing my channel for the very first time, and an equally warm welcome if you are a returning viewer.
Sorry, I got distracted by a book trolley. I was like, oh, what's that?
Well, I'm not going to edit that out, so
Okay,
people will just know you've got a very short attention span.
When it comes to books.
And today I am joined by my lovely son,
Eldest and favourite.
Simon of Savage Reads. And I invited you to join me today, partly...
Well, did you invite me, or did you basically say you're only going to get an apple crumble if...
Apple and cherry.
It was, to be fair, she did throw cherries in.
With cardamom.
Yeah, that's true. And if you've seen my video of my autumn reading plans, and part of it's inspired by crumble, and I mentioned the luxurious pineapple crumble, it's Louise Savage that made it.
It did have rum and raisins in it as well.
I don't remember that, but I do remember pineapple.
I made one for a while. It's very wintry, very nice. Oh no, autumnal even. So I asked Simon to join me because it is the first day of autumn, or at least we feel that it is. It's the 1st of September today, as we're filming it. And it's a weird thing, but it never ceases to surprise me how much the seasons affect, not necessarily my reading, but the way I feel about what I'm reading. And so I asked Simon for some autumnal recommendations.
Well, originally, because Louise Savage is retired, her first request was, should we do a summer reading recommendations? I said, oh, I don't know if you're aware, Mum, but on Sunday it's actually autumn.
And I hadn't really thought about it.
But what's your favourite season?
Oh, I'm not so sure that I have one, because every time a new season comes, I get kind of excited about the season. I was born in the autumn, and I love the colours of autumn and the smells of autumn. But equally, I absolutely love, I think May time as well is one of the most beautiful times of the year in this country. And of course, what's not to like about summer? And winter, you've got the celebration of Christmas and families getting together. I tell you what, I have a month I don't like.
Oh.
I hate February.
Oh.
Sorry, but I always feel really in February.
At least it's gone quick.
Yes. Yes.
See, my favourite is autumn, and I'm not an autumn child. I was a spring baby, but autumn I feel my most me. Like I've already got my jumper on. I'm ready to sort of hunker down. I don't know, there is something about that time of year where I just feel the most like this is my time of year.
Yeah, I just have to mention, by the way.
Yes.
It's a bit of a sore point. Gift from
me, because I bought it for myself. However, when I put it on, it's like a crop top.
Yeah. And these are official Women's Prize merchandise.
We're not sponsored by the Women's Prize, but we both love it.
Really enjoying wearing it.
Yeah,
love the Women's Prize,
and I really love it. Actually, a little bit soon, seeing as I haven't been able to wear it.
And it doesn't show my midriff. You'll be very pleased to hear. It comes right down to my bottom, so we're safe.
It did show my midriff, and I don't think the internet was ready.
Should we talk about books?
Yes, sorry.
So Simon, what is your first autumn
Well, do you want to go ladies first? And it is also your channel.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll go first. So I've also chosen some recommended...
I don't think we've actually said that's what we're doing.
Have we not?
We're doing recommended autumn reads. We've got 5 each.
We have got 5 each. And I wasn't sure, when I thought about it, whether I was recommending them to you personally or to...
I'm recommending them to them and to you.
Our audience. So I think I've chosen at least one that I think, I know you've read.
Oh.
So I'm just putting it out
there.
It's
not a recommendation to me then, is it? I've read it.
Yes, but Simon, the audience comes first.
Well, that's what I was saying. I picked books that I think you might have read one of mine.
Ah, there we go.
Maybe. Oh, you definitely have.
So the first up is one that I'm pretty sure you have not read. And one of the things about autumn is...
No, I haven't read this.
His face. One of the things about autumn is it's that whole thing of the nights drawing in the UK and snuggling up with a book that you can really that's leisurely and in its development, but equally has lots and lots of lovely plot twists. And I have chosen as my first recommendation Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge. Now, why did you moan?
I'm really interested. Hardy.
Which Thomas Hardy's have you read?
Well, we used to listen to Tess of the D'Urberville like in the car.
Well, that's probably put you off because that's
And
not
I
one
like
of my
that.
favourites.
No, I like that one.
Oh, okay.
And then I've tried others and not got past chapter 2.
Which others have you tried?
Quite a few.
Have you tried Mayor of Casterbridge?
Although I will say, Ben Myers wrote a book that I absolutely loved, and I called it The Bastard Love Child of Cormac McCarthy and Thomas Hardy. So I must have a slight liking for Thomas Hardy because I love Ben Myers.
Yeah. You see, I absolutely... This is one of the books that really got me hooked when I was younger on Victorian novels. And it was serialised on telly, but I read it before that. And inside it says, to Louise, with lots of love from Mummy and Daddy, Christmas 1977. So I was 12.
You weren't even born then. People won't believe you were born then.
I was 12 when I read this book. And the other thing about this book is that somewhere, I think it's the back look, it was
Who's
nibbled.
chewed that?
Well, exactly. So my brother had a guinea pig that Christmas. And I remember on Christmas Day, the guinea pig
What was
got
the guinea
out.
pig called?
Oh, Fred. I mean, obviously. The guinea pig got out and chewed my book. It had also kept me up all night as well because I was sleeping with my brother that night in the, you know, we shared a bedroom. He was on the floor, I was in the bed.
And all you could hear was Fred eating your book.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Not
childhood
eating my
nightmares.
book, but so yeah, I remember being absolutely outraged that this book had been nibbled. But this book is, I think, fabulous in terms of you've got wonderful sort of Hardy's books are full of beautiful rural descriptions, and he's very good at writing about the rural life of ordinary people in Victorian times as well, the people who work the land. And I really love that. And autumn is a time, I mean, I live in a small village in Shropshire, and, you know, we have...
I would say micro village.
A micro village. Oh, there's a new term. And, you know, you're constantly aware of the agricultural people at work at this time of year because, you know, they're cutting the crops and all that kind of thing.
Is this where he sells his wife for a cow?
Yes. Not for a cow.
Oh, what does he sell her for?
Just sells her for money. And it has got one of the best opening scenes, I think, of any book ever. And I've used this a lot with teenagers. They've really enjoyed this in the classroom. We've looked at it and they've rewritten it, or they've used it as a stimulus for other ideas. So basically, it starts with this man called Michael Henchard, and they arrive at this rural fair. He and his wife and his baby, female baby. I can't remember her name. It's gone.
Also known
Susan,
as daughter.
I think. Daughter. That's it. Female baby daughter. Oh Lord, why do I do these videos with you? I lose the plot even more than normal. And basically, he has a few drinks, and clearly, you know, he's dissatisfied with his wife, and he puts her up for sale, and you kind of don't think either of them are going to go along with it. And it's not a plot spoiler because it happens straight away, but he does sell his wife to this man who's a kind of retired sailor, and then the novel, you know, sort of goes off in all sorts of amazing directions. And it's called The Mayor of Casterbridge because we fast forward, and that's what Michael Henchard has become. So we're introduced to him as this drunken man who sells his wife in kind of almost like a fit of pique. And yet he's become this sort of pillar of the community, and their paths collide again. And I just think it's so... I mean, I just love Hardy for... You know, he's a Victorian writer. His novels were serialised in the newspaper. And so you have shortish chapters, very long sentences, real cliffhangers. And the twists and turns of this novel are fantastic. And there's a really strong kind of sort of moral element to it too. You know, it's almost like a kind of parable, really. And I just think I would really highly recommend it as an autumn read. But I don't think Simon's going to read it, do you? Look at his face.
Well, I'm waiting to see if there's one under the Christmas tree this year to Simon from Mummy.
Oh, well, that's a good idea, isn't it? But
Although, can you make sure it's got big font?
Yeah, this is from
font.
1977.
Well, also that cover's a bit of a travesty, but I do like the fact that you kept it in remembrance of Fred.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Edition.
Well, he became mine because my brother didn't look after him properly.
Well, so I've done mine autobiographical, alphabetical order. Sorry. Of author.
Oh dear, should I be worried?
And this first one is, we're talking about crumble, and one of the things, if you've seen, sorry to self-promote, but my autumn reading plans is one of my sort of themes for autumn is books that are a bit crumbly, be it that they're crumbling houses or crumbling characters, but also if they make you feel warm, like you've just had an apple crumble, and this is the latter. And also there will be an adaptation of this on the telly this autumn, so it all fit into one, and that is Mr. Loverman by Bernadine Evaristo, and I absolutely adore this book. This is all about Barrington and his wife Carmel, and Barrington has been keeping a secret because the friend that he came over from the Caribbean with is more than a friend, and he's feeling like it might be time to tell everyone. And it is just such a...
He's an older man as well, isn't he?
Yes.
Is he in his 60s?
Yes.
Yeah.
So sorry, I should have added that. Thank you.
No, but I think that's
glad you're here,
interesting.
Louise. But yeah, so it's kind of, it looks at what it's like to be a queer black man in Britain, but also the issues around sexuality in the Caribbean and why there is all this secrecy. But what I also really love is how it's so full of warmth and wit and joy, but it's also got some really sort of complex situations going on. And the way that Bernadine writes about Carmel, his wife, who admittedly is not always likable. I mean, none of them are particularly likable all the time, but I thought the way that she dealt with Carmel as a character was so brilliantly done, because you go through a heartbreak, which is the result of happiness.
Yeah.
And but I'm not saying that's what you want for autumn. I'm not wishing that on everyone. But it is this is kind of a warm, comforting hug of a book, but also kind of really, what's the word? It really opens you up to all these different emotions. And I just think it's absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favourite. It could be, it's between this and Girl with Another all the time, which my favourite Bernadine book is.
So I would say The Emperor's Babe and that for me.
Oh yeah, you really like The Emperor's Babe. But yeah, and I really like that book too, I should say. But this to me, perfect autumn, and then you can watch the TV show afterwards, because it's coming this autumn.
To that. And she's been really involved, hasn't she? I think in the production.
Also, look at that font.
Yeah.
Delicious. So,
well, it's very interesting that you've picked that, because
I should say, actually, can I just show off the fact that I did pack it all in an autumnal bag?
Oh, yes,
I've got my autumnal tote at the ready as well. From Machynlleth. Sorry.
So, talking of warmth, and this isn't a book that you would necessarily associate with warmth, and I know you've read this because it was longlisted for the Women's Prize some years ago.
Oh, it's a dark one, this one,
It's
though,
very
Louise.
dark. It is very dark, but it's also not. So, it's called How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones, and I think this was longlisted quite a few years ago now.
Maybe 3 or 4?
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, how certain books kind of return to you. Like you sort of, you know, when I was looking through my shelves yesterday, I thought, oh God, I've got such a strong relationship with this particular book. And one of the reasons that I've chosen it is because although it is a really distressing, I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted, this novel at all, and it involves really awful domestic abuse and actually I'm not going to say because it would give the plot away a bit, but something incredibly tragic, well, lots of incredibly tragic things happen in this novel. So you're thinking, why Louise would you choose this?
Well, I am thinking that currently.
But the thing that really impresses me about this novel is that despite the fact so it focuses on a young woman who is pregnant at the beginning of the novel, and she's trying to, I mean, I really remember reading it, she's trying to climb up these very dodgy stairs to the sort of shack she lives in with her husband, and it's the story of her and her husband and the difficult relationship that they have. But Cherie Jones writes about these characters with so much empathy and so much warmth. So you've got those two, but you've also got there's a white woman, or a very pale-skinned woman who is extremely wealthy and has this really amazing house on the beach and a horrendous.
She can pass as white if she isn't white.
Yes. You know, and they get their story gets caught up in her story in a really awful way. I mean, there are some very sensational moments in this. You know, if you like something that it's kind of plot driven, but it kind of isn't, because the characters are so splendid. And so you've got all these really tortured people, but Cherie Jones shows so much empathy and warmth for these characters. And there is a kind of sort of slightly positive thing, I think, towards the end of the novel, which again I can't talk about for obvious reasons.
I'm doing poker face.
So it gives me a warm feeling despite the horror within it.
It is also in a warm
setting.
And
also it's set in Barbados. Yeah. So yeah, I was just coming on to that.
What's the name? Isn't the name something like Peril Bay or something like that?
Remember.
It's something really sinister, but it's a real place.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know if it says on the back.
It'll be on the inside somewhere anyway.
And you've also got this fantastic contrast between all these tourists who are arriving and, you know, seeing it as this kind of, you know, idyllic place to go on holiday. And the main character, is she called Lala? That doesn't sound right. Can't remember what she's called. But she braids hair on the beach, you know, so she makes her living from braiding the hair of tourists when they come. And you've got this real vicious contrast between the tourists and their view of this place and what's really going on amongst the inhabitants, be they rich or poor. And I think that's so important for us, you know. I mean, I love my travel, you love your travel, and I think it's always, when I'm travelling, I try a little bit to think about what's the reality of the place exactly that I'm visiting. So I think for me that is an autumn book, because it's that empathy, it's that love of people. And
also you use the word sensational, and I think sensational novels, I didn't think to put a sensational novel in the mix, because that is the sort of Victorian literature I like your Wilkie Collins, or your Arthur Conan Doyle. But I know what you mean. It's that kind of, because those novels were really shocking, really gripping, and really propulsive, and that is what this book is very like.
It is. It's hard to put down.
Yeah,
but even then you need a break
really
from it.
Need to put it down.
Yeah.
Interesting. So my next one is a historical murder mystery, told backwards. Have you read this? The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey, who's now up for the Booker with Orbital. So this is Samantha Harvey's previous book, and I absolutely love this. So this is set in medieval England, and we are in quite a small town/village, and there has been a murder, but you start 4 days after the murder and then you work backwards. And I've only just, so I can say this, I've only just forgotten recently the last chapter, but it makes you want to go back and read the whole thing again, because you realise that you've kind of been missing certain things, but actually you also realise that Samantha Harvey's been pointing you in quite the right direction but misdirecting you. It's really clever. And this, I guess, weirdly links to the Mayor of Casterbridge, because this is very much a rural, harvesty.
Well, it's got all those lovely autumn leaves all over the front, but
it's got that sort of agriculturally harvesty time of year to it, and there's something about the muddiness and the ruggedness of nature around all these people. Plus there is some absolutely odious characters you will absolutely love to hate. It's just so well done, and I do think she's an incredible writer. This is my favourite of her books. I loved Orbital a lot, but this, I just think the way that she plays with time and therefore perception, and also what she's doing with you as a reader, because you know it's kind of a literary thriller, and I like a literary thriller at autumn as well. So I can't recommend this one enough. The paperback looks very different from this, but it's still really, really lovely. But yeah, I think she's a fantastic author. And have you read Dear Thief?
Yes.
Because that's, again, she's very good at sort of these literary thrillers, and then she's also got, there's one novel of hers I haven't read, but her debut was all about Alzheimer's, and that's a really haunting, beautiful book, also covered in autumnal leaves. So yeah, Samantha Harvey, all her books, but particularly this one, I think is an absolute corker, and just perfect for this time of year. Yeah. Curling up on a sofa with that, it's like a Sunday mystery, but every day of the week.
Well, brace yourself, because I've gone incredibly bleak now.
I've not read this, so I don't know how bleak it is.
So this is, and again, it's not a particularly inspiring cover, but this was gifted to me by a friend of mine years and years ago.
Absolutely appalling.
It is awful. But it's called The House of Sand and Fog.
Are you sure they were a friend giving you that?
Yes. It's The House of Sand and Fog, and I never know how to pronounce this, by Andre Dubus III.
Well, right. That's quite grand in itself.
And this was made into a film that was quite successful cover, with Ben Kingsley as in the lead. His face is on the cover. So, you know, obviously the when did I read it? March 2004 I've written in it, but I think I might have read it before then. But anyway, and this has, you'd hate the font, so you'd have to have a different version, Simon, if you were, it's very, very tiny font. And it's called The House of Sand and Fog. And, you know, for me, November, it's that time of year when you get all that spooky mystery, you know, and this is set, I think it's California, set in California. So it, you know, and there is fog and murk in the background of this book.
Is it a big creepy old house?
No. So it's not a big creepy old house. This comes with, I mean, if you thought The One-Armed Sister was bleak, this is probably one of the darkest books I've ever read, I'm afraid. So it does come with serious trigger warnings. But it has stayed with me. It's really, really lingered with me, and I don't want to read it again because it's got Greek tragedy vibes. You know, that idea of ending up with all sorts of horrendous. Again, I've got to be careful because I'm going to give too much away. But there is something relentless about this story where you just know right from the beginning that something really horrendous is going to happen. And yet it's a very, what's the word? It's a very kind of domestic, very ordinary setting. So basically what happens is and I can't remember the characters' names, I'm really sorry, but it's a long time ago. But basically it's all about a woman who owns an apartment. And her husband's left her, and she's an alcoholic, so she's got a problematic life, and she hasn't been opening her mail. She's been discarding her mail, and basically she's the tax. I think it's a tax thing. They've been the tax department have been sending her letters because it is in the days of letters, and these letters are to do with her ownership of the apartment, and basically she loses the apartment because she's neglected to respond to these letters. It's a legal thing. And then there's a character who was a colonel in the Iranian army who's he's an immigrant to America, and his wife, and they buy the house. So they've bought the house legally. It was her house, but she wants it back, understandably. You know, it was a mistake. And so you get the story of her and her struggles. Then you get to really know the colonel and his wife who come to live in the house. And I will never forget that wife. Like, her character is really, really etched on my brain. So the characterization I think is really good in this novel, which is probably why it made a good film. But the woman who originally owned the house, the sheriff or whatever his title is, the American cop who comes to investigate the situation, falls for her, and he then becomes entangled in this story. So it's just it's not quite like anything else I'd read before. I think partly because of the Iranian connection, and you know, I know I've read lots of novels about immigrants to America from South America or from Italy or whatever, but I don't think I'd really read anything before that was someone emigrating from that part of the world. So I think that really fascinated me. So I really enjoyed it.
The title's very autumn.
Yeah, but it is really, really dark, which is probably why I don't think I've raved about it on the channel before.
Well, also, it's interesting you say that's one that you don't want to read, because you said that recently about the Admiral Broom.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't read it again.
That's got a very autumnal cover.
Yeah, it has, but I couldn't read that again.
Oh, okay. My next one is again another literary thriller. It's in translation. I love this book to bits. It's Purge by Sofi Oksanen, and it is translated by, this is back in the day where they didn't put them on the covers, Lola Rogers. I think she's maybe Estonian. Anyway, this is set in the Estonian woods where this woman is living all by herself, and then one day this mysterious young girl just appears, and because it's a literary thriller, I don't really want to say much more than that, other than you find out a very shocking part of Estonian history, and it may be to do with trafficking. That's all I'm going to say. So it's interesting we keep choosing books that aren't really necessarily for the faint of heart, because I remember being really shocked and surprised by this, but at the same time, Sophie has this habit of writing in this way that's so gripping and compelling. This isn't one that you can even almost at some points take a breath from, because you're so invested in what's going on. And also the history of this older woman kind of comes more and more to the fore as you find about the history of this younger woman. I think that cover is absolutely stunning, and unfortunately with the new paperback they have made it look much more like a thriller, so it's not quite gripping. But also this is one of those books where I loved it so much that I will say that Sofi Oksanen is one of my favourite authors, even though I've not read any of her other books yet still. But this autumn I really, really want to head to, there's one about a woman who's sat at a park and a woman sits next to her and it's someone she's not seen for 15 years and instantly wants to move away from. And that's all you get. And then that, I think, looks at Ukraine. So I think, you know, she writes really interesting. So she's done another one called Norma, which is about a young girl whose hair grows and grows like Rapunzel, but also her hair is psychic. So if people chop it, she can't remember things, but she knows, and her mum's just died, and she knows she's not been told the truth about why her mum's just died. So all her books have kind of got this really unsettling nature to them. But yeah, this I just thought was absolutely phenomenal. And it was one of those real surprise books. It was a cover by, and I'm thinking, oh, let's see how I get on. And I genuinely could not put it down. I think I read it in like 2 days. So yeah, I would highly, highly recommend this. I didn't really give, that feels like I didn't sell it a lot, but it's one that you can't give too much away with. So yeah, but yeah.
No, it's not. Well, you've sold it to me.
Also, again, lovely bond.
So next up, I think you might have read this. I'm not sure.
I have read this.
Yeah. So it's Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquival.
I've never seen the film though.
I think I have, but I can't remember much about it. Now, the reason I chose this particularly was because in the autumn, I always get the urge to bake.
Eat chocolate.
Well, yeah, actually, that's interesting because as the night story, I'm not a massive, I prefer crisps and nuts and things,
I do generally.
But I would tend towards chocolate in the winter.
Or a good Turkish
and a lovely hot
delight.
chocolate. Oh yeah, Turkish delight.
Anyway, sorry.
So I read this book years and years ago, and really, really loved it. And it has a recipe at the beginning of each chapter, which, you know, for me is a perfect kind of autumnal. I've never tried to make any of the recipes actually. That might be quite an interesting thing to do.
That could be a good vlog.
Yeah, it could be. You've tasted my cooking though.
Yeah. We had a lovely chicken creamy peppercorn.
Yeah, do you want to share the accident?
Well, apparently Mum just went a bit wild with the peppercorns.
I forgot to put my glasses on when I was cooking.
Basically do lots of different cream and sauce to kind of get rid of it. It tasted really nice. Apparently it was an original Roman recipe.
It was a Roman recipe by Apicius.
Anyway.
Yeah.
You'd be furious about
it was supposed to have 10 peppercorns and I put 2 tablespoons of peppercorns in. Yeah. Anyway, we survived. So the premise of this story is that, there's this fantastic scene towards the beginning where a mother gives birth on a kitchen table, which is quite sort of unusual and dramatic. And the product of that delivery is a young girl. And again, is she called Tita, I want to say. I think she's called Tita. And she, following her birth, her father dies of a heart attack. And so basically she is told, due to the sort of family folklore, she's not allowed to marry. Tita's not allowed to marry. And of course she's born in the kitchen and the family cook is present at the birth, and she really feels, I think, a lot of empathy for Tita because she's never going to be allowed to marry. So she teaches her to cook. But the brilliant thing is that when Tita cooks, she invests the whole of herself into the cooking. So she cooks a wedding cake at one point. She cries into the wedding cake. Her tears go into it. And as a result, all sorts of extraordinary things happen at the wedding. So it's a book really about, I mean, it's a love story. There is a really, really beautiful love story at the centre of this novel. But it's also about food and how important food is to your culture and how creating food is an act of emotion, you know, that there is emotion attached to it, be it usually, hopefully you're doing it out of love, but not always. And I just think it's a wonderful story. I read it.
I think it's one of those ones along with Perfume that was one of the books that you let me read as I was starting to try books for grown-ups.
Oh, yeah. Have you got fond memories of it?
I have, but it's a long time ago because as you pointed out, I'm quite old. So anyway, my penultimate pick is, because it's witchy season,
Oh,
I thought I would choose a witchy book with a difference. This is A History of Dreams by Jane Rawson, who's from The Wreck I was obsessed
I
with.
love that book as well.
This is only available in Australia, so I guess I should put that as a bit of a... It's quite hard to get your mitts on. However, it's brilliant. So this is about 4 young women. You have... Oh, I'm going to forget their names now. Oh, Margaret and Esther, who are sisters. You have Phyllis, who is one of the sister's friends, and then you have Aubrey, who's another of the sister's friends. And Aubrey has inherited through her aunt and been taught the magic of witchcraft and the power of controlling dreams. And the other 3 girls don't believe this at first, but however, they start to suddenly see that it may be possible. And so they start a coven in Melbourne with the aim to stop World War II.
Oh, what an incredibly zany idea.
It's a kind of alternate version of the world, so it doesn't quite stick to history, but the essence is very much there. And this is very much about men knowing that something's going on and how they try to take it on. And honestly, I just loved this book, and like the characters are so good, and the way she writes about sibling dynamic and how friends or people can come into that dynamic and really change it is phenomenal. I love the way she writes about Phyllis. Phyllis is a character that I am never, ever, ever going to forget. And it just felt really different. And also I think the cover is particularly autumnal. It's just a very autumnal cover. And yeah, I just thought this was absolutely fantastic. And I read it in July, so not the most autumnal of seasons, although we didn't really go to summer this year here. But I was just completely spellbound by it. There, I've said it. So I would really recommend it if you want something that's witchy but a little bit different from what you think you're going to get. I just think,
great pick.
Yeah, it's a really, 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 really brilliant book.
So my final choice, because you've said you like a thriller.
Oh, I love this book.
Yes.
But I'm shocked you've read it because it's filthy.
A long time ago. So this is Apple Tree Yard by Louise Doughty, and yeah, I read this a while ago, and I've chosen this because it is that time of year. I think we both agree on this, when you want something that's quite thrillery and quite but also I like my politics, and in the UK Parliament returns at this time of year, having had the summer recess, and also of course it's the American elections right now, very much in the news over here. So I've kind of got my political head on, and the connection with this novel is that the lead character is a woman called Yvonne, and she's a scientist, and I just love it when you get, it's so rare in fiction that you get a female scientist as a protagonist. It doesn't, there have been, I was thinking about it actually, there have been quite a crop of novels in the last year or two where that is the case. But it's still, I think, very rare to see women in that role. So I love Louise Doughty for putting a female scientist at the centre of this novel. But it's just this brilliant sort of... She basically, Yvonne goes to Parliament to present some sort of scientific paper to a group of MPs, I guess, or some committee. And she bumps into this MP. They don't know each other. They've never met before. But he offers
instant, like there's like
there's this
thing
like
between
thing,
them.
And he offers to take her down to the Undercroft in the Houses of Parliament, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say, is it? They just have this.
Well, Undercroft is the right term.
Yes, they have a shag basically, like, out of nowhere. Out of nowhere, and this affair begins.
They have an intimate illicit moment.
Sorry, everybody. Well,
oh, what a memory for the rest of my life. Anyway.
And so this affair, and it's a kind of stop-start affair, and lots of other things sort of...
There's a lot of outdoor, illicit, intimate moments
there are.
follow.
So it's quite racy, but it's just a brilliant story. I can walk the rooms of Yvonne's house. She starts to type imaginary letters to Mr. X, as she calls him, on her laptop, and of course there's the jeopardy of whether her husband will find out, and it's just and things happen that you just can't anticipate. I think it's a really, really good, and of course apples, autumn, it's perfect.
An autumn shags. Anyway. But
You've
also
got to have some way of keeping warm this time of year.
Oh, it's got worse. Oh Lord. Anyway, moving swiftly on, I just wanted to say what that book sometimes I think is sold as a bit of a frothy book, and it's so.
Oh, no way! It's hard. It's tough.
But also, I love the way it looks at female desire.
Yes.
I
Even though
think-
he doesn't want to acknowledge it.
No, it's not. It's my mum.
Joking.
She's Mother Teresa in my mind. But anyway, no,
That
it's
is the weirdest
it's
analogy you've
that
ever made.
thing of like, I just think it's quite it's a very feminist book.
Yes, I think it
And I
is
think,
as well.
but it's also got this real propulsion and real, I was going to say thrust.
And
but
it was a
that's not
brilliant TV series with Emily Watson
Yes.
playing Yvonne, and I thought she was, it was superb.
And also, it shouldn't matter, but it does. Louise Doughty is absolutely wonderful. She's a really,
Yes,
really,
she
really,
is.
really lovely woman.
Yeah, she is.
And speaking of lovely women, my final pick, I've only picked books by women accidentally, is an author who is currently also up for the Booker Prize this year. And this is a little bit of dystopia, but it's also, speaking of feminist, probably one of the most feminist novels I think I've ever read. You've read it. It's The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood. And this book, not only do I think it has a very autumnal cover, that purple I think is quite autumnally, this is a book that, even though it's set in the heat of Australia and it's a deserty book, it still has a real autumnal vibe for me. I think it's the fact that it feels a bit gritty.
Yeah,
And
I
it
know
feels
what
a
you
bit
mean. I kind of know what you
hazy
mean.
and like sort of the end of summer for some reason.
Yeah.
But this is about two women who wake up in basically a cage. They have been shaved, they have got sackcloth on, and they realise that soon that they're in this sort of compound in the middle of the Australian desert, where lots and lots of other women have been taken away from their lives and basically kept there. It has one of the most sinister nurses I have ever read, who I think is along the Nurse Ratched lines. She's phenomenal. And you basically go along with one of the characters, Yolanda, as she's working out why she is there, but also why they are there. And then suddenly it all clicks. But as that's going on, it's how this group of women are sort of left to become feral. They have to catch their own food at some point.
It's got Big Brother vibes.
It has, but also then there's this sort of complete and utter isolation, wilderness. Who's in control? What's going on? It's a real mystery at the same time, but it's that sort of dystopic that could also be so close.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's how dystopia works.
the propulsion of it, again, is one that I think this can be read in like a couple of days, because it's a book that is driven by rage. I think it's not an angry book. That doesn't mean it's angry, but it's a book that's definitely driven by rage.
I would say it's an aggressively feminist book.
Yes. But also one that I think is all the more pertinent again at the moment with what's going on with our world in terms of the digital world. And I don't want to say any more because I don't want to spoil it, but if you haven't read Charlotte Wood yet, you must. You still haven't read Stone Yard Devotional.
No, I'm
really
because
need
I'm
to.
savouring it. I want, when you want the right moment to read a book.
But this, I would say, is an absolute banging autumn book. And I don't read that many dystopic books, but I absolutely love this book. And also, I don't know if it's the same with the edition here, but it's even got like, I forgot it's in parts, in seasons. So there is a part of
seasonal
it
vibe
that has got autumn in it. And you've also got mushrooms and things inside. So yeah, nature. Again, there's quite a lot of nature in this book.
Yeah. Well, Simon, thank you. I really enjoyed that. And I've got some good recommendations as well.
Louise.
Well,
I really enjoyed that.
Well, I don't need to tell everybody how grumpy you were this morning. No, I'm lying. That's an
grumpy.
absolute lie. You wasn't
Just
grumpy
sometimes
at
a
all.
little quieter on a Sunday. I'm very excited. This is like my favourite time of the year, so I can feel my energy building, which is lovely.
Oh dear. Oh gosh.
I know you're in for quite the season.
Anyway, we're hopefully off book shopping shortly,
Possibly,
aren't we?
yes.
That's the plan, I think.
Yeah.
So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you've got some lovely books ready at your side to enjoy this autumn, and hopefully speak to you all soon. Thanks again, Simon, for joining me on my channel.
Thank you for that apple crumble.
It's a pleasure.
Bye.
Are you ready?
I'm just being very sweet and angelic.
You're being sweet and angelic.
Very mindful, very demure.
For the first time in 40 odd years.
How dare you? I am 32.
You finally got there.
I am 32.
I was there, I know.
I got told by my barber the other day that he thought I was 34.
Yeah, but you're paying him to do you a service.
Rude. Anyway.